Hey, in this video, I'm going to talk to you about how to professionally interview somebody. So whether you're being interviewed or whether you're interviewing somebody, these tips will still work. But these are the lessons that I've got from actually interviewing over 1,000 individuals, from millionaires to celebrity influencers to billionaires and super successful entrepreneurs. These are the different lessons that I've learned from interviewing 1,000 people. And I've actually been interviewed over 600 times. So I could say 1,600. But here's the things I'm going to fly through for you real quick so that you can better interview people and be better at being interviewed. So here's the tips. Number one, you've got to build rapport. It sounds obvious that you'd want to build rapport with the person, but you'd be shocked how many individuals, when they go and interview somebody, all they've ever done is a little bit of research. And although it is important to do research, I think that it's so obvious when you're watching a movie or a show and two people have a really good connection, and you can see that it doesn't even seem like they're acting, they're not even trying, because they have rapport. And it's the same thing in an interview. You can tell when two individuals almost seem like they're best friends because the rapport and the flow is so on point. And I've realized after doing so many interviews that the people that I didn't have rapport with, it's not that the interview wasn't good, it's just that the individuals that I did have rapport with was so much of a better interview. You could feel the interview. And so the way that you can build rapport, so there's an action step behind the tip, is make sure that before the interview you take about 5 to 10 minutes to just ask a couple questions, get to know each other, find something that you have in common and go deep on that for a little bit, maybe get them laughing. So any way that you would, figure out how to build rapport with somebody is the same thing that you'd want to do here by simply taking 5 to 10 minutes to talk. A lot of the times people go, all right, you ready to start the interview? It's gonna be about 30 minutes, let's go. And so take a little bit of time to build rapport. Seems obvious, but it's very powerful to do that. Next one is know your audience. And again, this one might sound obvious as well. I hope, know the audience. But what I really mean by that is so many times people go, let's do the interview, we're talking to entrepreneurs. But entrepreneurs is the most broad term ever, right? You could be a startup entrepreneur who's just getting started in your first year, you have no idea what you're doing. Or maybe you could be a billionaire entrepreneur. So a lot of the time people say, oh, they're entrepreneurs, oh, they're coaches, oh, they're people in the fitness space, they're gym owners. But that's not specific enough. Just like when you're running online marketing, you want to be very specific with who you're targeting. It's very similar with knowing your audience. And so I've found that there's really two types of shows. There's shows where the audience is very broad. Maybe there's hundreds of thousands or millions of people tuning into the show, like my buddy John Lee Dumas with Entrepreneur on Fire. He gets hundreds of thousands and millions of listeners on his show for every episode. And so his audience is more broad, it's entrepreneurs. There'd be a lot of different categories, so that one's a little bit tougher to know the audience, but I'm sure John would have stats on who his audience is, specifically the majority, and why they tune in. Whereas the other type of podcast is more niched, and that's an easier one to start. You're better off starting a podcast for the people out there who are thinking about starting a show, making it very specific. It's for young women 25 to 35 who just got married, just got a home, and just had their first children. That would be very specific. Or people that are, baby boomers looking to get in the best shape of their life. That would be specific. And so knowing your audience is absolutely crucial, because as we get down to the next ones here, all of these come in order. This is the order and the flow of the interview. So you got build rapport and know the audience. The third one is have a clear outcome. Again, right? Have a clear outcome should be obvious, but so many times people think that there's just an interview, you're gonna ask me questions, and at the end, hopefully people go to my website, opt in for my thing, maybe take action to buy, hopefully I impacted some people. Those are a lot of different things that you hope happen, but if you have a very clear outcome, then you can tailor the interview to hit that goal. So having a clear outcome is essential. What I do is I talk to the person and I say, here's my outcome for the interview, what is your outcome? And so just be on the same page. Their outcome might be to bring somebody on their show who has an incredible story, to give actionable steps that their audience can benefit from. And maybe you, as the person being interviewed, you're looking to get more people to be inspired. You're looking to get more people to take action. Maybe even have people, go to your website, opt in for your free training or whatever you have, and maybe even buy your services if they resonate with your message. So just have a clear outcome and make sure that you and the person doing the interview are on the same page. Again, these tips work whether you're doing the interview or whether you're being interviewed. So the next one is be concise or be captivating. This is huge. So many people, I'm going to circle this one because this one's so important. And put a little star here. So many people blow it on their interviews with this. Again, no disrespect, but after 1,000 interviews, there are a lot of people who do not know number 4. They're not concise, meaning they're direct, they're to the point, they don't waste any time or any fluff, or they're not captivating. They don't know how to tell a good story. And so just make sure that when you're being interviewed or you're interviewing somebody, that you or them are being concise, meaning you're direct, you're to the point, you're not adding a bunch of fluff and beating around the bush and making it so the person forgot what you were even talking about, or be captivating. So if you're really good at telling stories and you know that you can pull somebody into the story of your life or the experience that you're sharing with them that has a lesson within it, then go ahead, tell incredibly powerful, captivating stories that pull the audience in, emotionally move them, and really get them to want to listen to the full interview. But again, being captivating is a much more difficult skill set. So my advice is just be concise. So just remember in your head when you're asking a question, be concise. Or if you're going to ask a powerful question with a really good frame, you can be captivating as well. Or if you're being asked a question, be concise or be captivating. If you catch yourself running on and telling a story that's all over the place and it's not captivating, reel it in and just go back to being concise and make the point. Next one, contextual relevancy. I think the first time I heard contextual relevancy was from my buddy Nicholas Kuzmich, who's a rock star when it comes to Facebook ads, and identification. So this one is powerful. This one is most people haven't heard this for marketing or for interviews. I'm talking about it specifically for interviews. Contextual relevancy really boils down to making sure that the audience that's listening to the interview understands the context of what you and the person are being interviewed or doing an interview on is relevant to their life, to the situation they're in. Everybody, you, me, people listening to the podcast or the show, everybody is trying to move away from pain or gain pleasure. And you've probably heard that before, I hope, because that's the driving, motivating factor behind all of us. Avoid pain or gain pleasure. And so the context, meaning what you're talking about, has to be relevant to the audience. And again, that might sound obvious. This is a fancy way of saying it, but oh my gosh, so many shows that people have, either person, the one leading the show or the one being interviewed, they don't understand how to make sure that they're being concise or captivating with the context of what they're saying is totally relevant to the audience. And that's why most people's shows never take off, because they're not doing these first 5 things. Specifically, number 5 being another really important one. And then number 6, this is simple, action-oriented. And what I really mean by that is a lot of interviews are just fluff. It's people telling stories, but there's no action. And so I'm hoping that as you're learning these 11 steps, you're going to identify that some of these, you're going to be able to, well, actually all of these, you're going to be able to take action on. And so just make sure that when you're interviewing somebody and they tell a story, that you come back in and have some form of an action step or a takeaway. So hey, you know, the way that I do it when I'm interviewing somebody is I'd say, I just finished interviewing you, or I just asked you a question, you were telling me your story, and then what I would do is I'd say, you know what I think is absolutely incredible about what you just shared with us is the fact that you said failure was something that you eventually, after 5 years, learned how to use it as a stepping stone. So many people think failure actually is a bad thing because that's how school conditions us, but in reality, you just said failure is the stepping stone to success. So for people listening right now, just remember that when you're failing, it's actually a good thing as long as you find the lesson within it so you can learn and improve. And so now I would have just taken your story of saying something about failure and I would tie it together and put some type of a takeaway or an action behind it. So that's number 6. Number 7 is it's not about either of you. What I mean by that is so many times we can get lost in the fact that I'm interviewing you or you're interviewing me, and so it's about us or about me if I'm being interviewed. And it's couldn't be farther from the truth. It's actually the opposite. It's not about either of us, it's about the audience. And so you just need to remember that when you're interviewing somebody, if they're talking about themselves, which is fine because it's an interview, not everybody's professional and knows that if you ask me a question, I'm supposed to answer in a way that makes the audience feel like they can identify with my story because it's contextually relevant to what they're going through. And I'm either going to do it in a concise way or I'm going to be captivating and tell it in the form of a story. And so most people don't understand how to be interviewed or interview somebody and make all of it related to the audience, but that's the most important thing, whether you're being interviewed or interviewing somebody, is to remember it's not about either of you. You as the person doing the interview or being interviewed, whichever scenario you're in control if you remember what I'm saying right now, which is you have to tie everything back to the audience. Make it so they can identify with it and so that the context and the relevancy of what you're talking about goes straight to their core. They're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I don't feel like I'm alone on the journey. This person achieved success that I want, and they just told me that they were once in the same spot I am, and here's how they overcame it. That perfectly resonates with me. Or I've been having this question, this frustration, or this perspective shift that I've been struggling with, or inner conflict, and what they just said perfectly helped me overcome that or see it from a different way. And so just remember, it's not about you. Tie everything back to the audience. That's how you have a really powerful interview. Next is recap and simplify. I'm going to recap and simplify what I just shared with you to give you an example. We talked about building rapport, knowing your audience, having a clear outcome, being concise or being captivating, having contextual relevancy so that your audience can identify with the context of what you're saying because it's relevant to them, and then make everything action-oriented or have a powerful takeaway. And then remember that it's not about either of you in the interview. It's about the audience that's listening. And so I just recapped and simplified everything in a short, concise way. And so when you're doing the interview, somebody goes on and they tell a really good story, recap and simplify it. Oh my gosh, that's so incredible. Your journey and your story is so inspiring. I'm sure our audience listening right now is feeling the same way I am, just in awe about how you were able to overcome this or that. And what I took away from that is this. And so I'll take your 5-minute, 3-minute, 10-minute rant on your story that hopefully was captivating, or else I'm gonna have to reel it in and be like, hold on, and put a roadblock and be like, make it concise. But you wanna recap and simplify a long story or the full interview. When you recap and simplify the full interview, you can say, wow, so you know what I took away from this interview, and I know the audience did as well. That's a powerful frame. What I took away from this interview, and I know the audience did as well, are these 3 things. Failure is a stepping stone to success. You've got to have people that support you in your life. If you don't have them currently, go and find new communities of people. And the last but not least is, you don't give up, whatever, I'm just making stuff up. But you get the point. You would recap and simplify the interview, or you would recap and simplify a long story. So that's powerful as well. Again, all of these little tiny things together make you an incredible professional interviewer or interviewee. People are going to be like, oh my gosh, you rocked it on our show. You were so good. I've been on a lot of the biggest shows with some of the biggest people in the world, and I'm often told that I was the best person they've had, or that I was the best person that's ever interviewed them. And yes, repetition, doing this over 1,000 times has helped that happen, but I'm hoping that you don't have to do 1,000 times, that from all of these lessons, you can go and crush interviews on either side of the table. Last 3 here, focus equals energy. And what I mean by that is, if you can control, if I'm interviewing you, if I can control your focus by asking questions to get you to tell stories. If I control your focus, it'll control your energy, and then that will make you feel a certain way. And so if you're like, man, this person's pretty dry on the interview, this is gonna be a boring interview, I'm gonna have to really edit this. My advice is get better at going deep on questions. Like for example, if I were to say, what is one of the worst, most painful moments of your life in your business career? Oh my gosh, talk about a captivating question that's gonna make the person's focus go down that rabbit hole. And then they're gonna hopefully, and I'll say, tell me about a time in your business where you were so afraid that you were gonna have to shut everything down and go back to a 9-to-5 job, because that's an entrepreneur's nightmare. And so that powerful question is gonna shift their focus, which is gonna make them think differently, and therefore they're gonna feel differently, and they're gonna tell a good story. So your ability to ask questions in a way that shifts their focus, it'll make them feel a different way and hopefully get them telling better stories. I find that there's people that are really good at telling stories because they're professional speakers, and I find there's people who are pretty good at telling stories because they're reliving and reliving the moment of this story, and they're able to tell it just like it was. And so focus equals energy. Ask powerful questions to elicit emotional states and stories. Last 2 here, prepare monologues to end strong. What I mean by that is, as you get to the end of the interview, don't be like, oh my gosh, how am I going to end the interview? What I often do when I end an interview is I say, okay, whoever, Bob, if I was interviewing you and your name was Bob, I'd say, okay, Bob, as we come to our final question, which is blank. So I'd say, all right, as we're coming to our final question here, Bob, what are 3 simple tips that you would give to our audience who's trying to build their personal brand? And then Bob would say, well, tip number 1, 2, 3. And I'd say, absolutely incredible tips, and I'd end with a powerful thing. So Bob, if people are feeling inspired, people are feeling motivated because they loved your story, they resonated with it, and they want to know more about you or even follow you to get more free advice, where can they do that? And so I'd have this prepared monologue so that the interview has a strong flow. I see a lot of the times people are so bad at interviewing, they just ask a question and they go, all right, so that was it. Thanks for coming on the show. Where can people find you? And although I might have said that good, that's not the best way to end an interview. Prepare a powerful way to end the interview and make it obvious for the listener as well as the interviewer that we're coming to the last question here. So hey, as we come to our last question, which is blank. And so there's a lot of different ways that you can do it, but prepare a strong monologue. And last but not least, number 11 is call to action for one thing. You see so many people end up making the mistake of saying, go to my Instagram, which is this, go to my Facebook, which is this, go to my YouTube channel, go to my website, or you can get my free gift at this website. And it's like, oh my gosh, where do you want them to go? There's so many directions of things you said. What you want to do is you want to have one place that you send them because you know that's the place you're going to get the most long-term benefits. If it's sending them to your website because your website has your email, it has free resources and videos and trainings and whatever, it also has your social media handles. That's my advice, to say go to shortenthegap.com because that's where we have all of our free resources and trainings, more interviews. You can have all my social media handles and reach out to me there, or you can even send me a direct email from our website as well. So everything that you'd want is at shortenthegap.com. So that's what I do, is I tell people first the website, I say, hey, if you want to reach out and follow me or send me a question or let me know how this interview impacted you, can go to shortenthegap.com. We've got free resources, trainings, interviews, and all my social media and email stuff. If you want to reach out to me is there as well. Again, shortenthegap.com. So that's how I end an interview. If you interviewed me and you said, hey, Mark, where can people go to learn more about you? I would say that. I'd say the website, I'd say the benefits of going to the website, which is everything they need, and then I'd say the website again. So always have a call to action with one place that you're sending them. If you just want to send them to your social media, then do just that and leave it at that. But my advice is send them to a website that has everything they might want as a viewer, resources, trainings, etc. So my heartfelt wish is that this is beneficial to you, that this is something that you're able to utilize, these 11 steps, or maybe they're not all beneficial. Maybe only a couple of these are going to help you, and that's fine. My intention is that this helps you go out and either have better interviews as the interviewer or being interviewed, because after doing over 1,600 interviews on both sides of the tables, these are the steps that I've sat down and I distilled to figure out what was the real reason and the biggest takeaways that my interviews have been so effective after I've done so many hundreds and eventually thousands. And so I hope this is helpful for you. If you have any questions or anything like that, you're welcome to comment or go to shortenthegap.com and send us a message.